All right, welcome back, everybody. We're working on our two-column layout, and I've already done some styling with background graphics. I want to explain what I did, how I did it, why, etc. And then we're going to do some new options here. And so everything's kind of set up. There's some code in my layout.css that you probably don't have. Okay, so let's start by just viewing the site as it stands with a few changes. Okay, right here, if you go to the website, one of the things you're going to notice is some background images. Now I'm going to zoom in really tight on here, and you can see there's a pattern behind everything. And then if you scroll up a little bit in the header, there's also a pattern. If you look really close, you zoom in tight, you see it? Okay, these are very subtle patterns. Same thing goes in the sidebar. In each of these, I'm using a tiling background graphic. Each one is separate. In fact, I got all of these from a website called subtlepatterns.com. And so from subtle patterns, you can look at different patterns here. You can preview what it looks like on the page. And so this is great for adding a little bit of some style to your site without necessarily like making it stand out and be really obvious. So I've gone in and I've downloaded a bunch of files, and let me show you the files I downloaded. One of the things you'll notice is to the body, I applied a background image of images/p1.png. So let's take a look at that folder. In the images folder, you will see there's a bunch of these folders here. These were all created from the site where I downloaded subtle images. So for example, when you download it, you'll get a zip file like this that says food. I've already deleted my other zip files because you didn't need to see that. But when you right-click and extract all, and this is from the subtlepatterns.com, you'll get a folder like this that you see here. Food. You go in. You may or may not see this Mac folder. Go into here. There's the graphic. And then you can take a look at it. So I took all of these graphics that I downloaded, and then I inserted them right in here. Okay, so let's take a look at the images that we've got here. So I'll just, binding dark, notice the size of the square. That's being used, I believe, in the header. Okay, and then the other one I have, remember that P1? Check this out. Can you see that graphic? That's that little dot right by my cursor. Let's zoom in on it really tight. Okay, this is actually, I believe, 8 pixels wide. And I believe 8 or more pixels tall. So very tiny graphic. And what's cool about this is that that graphic at normal size, repeated over and over, is a very subtle pattern. Now, I could have just gone in and randomly selected a couple pixels and just given them slight colors or slightly different from others and create my own little subtle pattern. Because that image is so small, but it gets tiled throughout the page, it really stands out when we look at it. Or it doesn't stand out. Excuse me, it actually does the opposite because it's subtle. And so full size, you don't see it unless you kind of look at it and you're looking for it. And then you suddenly realize something's going on with the pattern. Now, I applied it to the background of the page so it goes underneath everything else. And I haven't completed all of the background graphics. But I did the same thing in the header and in the sidebar, but with different graphics. So let's look real closely at those. And the way I went about doing that is for the header, background image, URL, images, binding dark.png, and aside.sidebar, background image, URL, images/tweed. So those are some of the graphics we use. Let's take a look at one more. Another gray one. So we did tweed, we did binding dark, P1. There's another one called gray wash wall. Let's look at it. So it's a bit of a dark one here. And let's go ahead and maybe apply it to the main page so you can watch and see how I do this. So we're going to look at our content. We're going to look at our HTML, and you'll notice there is a section with a class of page. There's also a section with a class of wrapper. I'm going to apply it to the page and see what happens. And since that page happens above a side dot sidebar, I will put it in here, and it's section dot page, and it's background image, URL, images slash, and what was that called again? Gray wash wall, all underscores. Is that gray with a E? Yes, it is. Gray wash wall.png. I noticed that all the tiling graphics are PNGs, so that makes it a little bit easier since they're all the same file type. And let's see what happens when we add it to the page. Hit refresh. Now I'm not seeing it. Why am I not seeing it? Well, let's find out.
Mr. Christensen yearbook signing. He has a stamp.
There is the background graphic, but I can't see it. Let's try applying it to the article with the class of main instead. There we go. Now, first thing I notice, one, I don't really like necessarily having that dark. Number two, I don't like having my text black on that dark gray background. And number three, we have an issue with our borders lining up. And I sort of created that problem for you. And let me explain what happened. And let's fix that before we do anything else with background graphics. You're going to want to get this fixed. So I'm going to go to F12 to look at this again. And in here with the toolbar, let's take a look. Notice the section sticks out to the left and the right. On the header, it doesn't. We're going to want to compare the header to the section. And if you look at it, there's a key difference between the two. On section, we have a margin left of -15 and a margin right of -15. In our header, we do not. The other thing, and so first of all, let's go ahead and fix that. Okay, so here's where the problem came into being, and then we'll talk about ways we can deal with that. One of the ways it came into being was when we did our sizing and layout, where we created for section page, article main, article sidebar, we gave a margin left and margin right of -15 pixels. I don't know if I did this in the last tutorial or not. I might have done that to sort of create that two-column layout that we're doing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delete this part here and save my changes and see if that fixes it. Yeah, okay. So at this point, we have it fixed. But we have another issue down here, and we'll look at that in just a moment. One of the things that we want to make sure we do is we want to make sure our text fits inside without a lot of things extending to the left or the right. And it looks like we pretty much got it here at this point. Okay, I see what I did. And then we did this padding left and padding right of 15 pixels. Okay, and that was to compensate. You know what? Let me go back and let me show you, try something a little different. Remember, we were doing that for our, we did the box sizing in the early one. I'm sorry, I'm going to bring that one back. Instead, we're going to do something a little bit different. First of all, let's see what the site looks like when we have that back. There we go. One of the things I recommend we do on our header is let's space out our header a little bit as well as our nav. Let's add some padding into our header to sort of balance out the padding that we had added over here. See the padding left and padding right in our article main, aside, sidebar. Let's put it in our header. Now we have a couple options as to how we do it. Okay. One of the things that you could do is you could just, for our header, just, oops, sorry, take caps lock off. Put header, And then we can add a padding left and a padding right of 15 pixels. Save our changes. Now watch what happens when we do that, though. All right, it's working a little bit, but it's still not quite the same on each of those. Instead, let's try the following. I forgot we're going to want to do the margin left and margin right of negative 15 pixels. Because we had done the box sizing, we just never applied it. We applied it only to get our 2 columns. All right, now that fits, but we have one little issue, and that is in our nav bar. You notice our nav bar, there's this little gap over here on the side. Part of that's because we put the nav bar inside of our header. The other thing we can do is we can take out the padding left and padding right from the header and apply it to our H group instead. Let's see if that makes a difference. Save our changes, go back, refresh. Perfect. Okay, so that's what we needed to do. We needed to make sure that the nav bar has a way of extending all the way to either side of the edges. But the header group, we wanted to tab that over so we'd have a nice little space to the left and the right of our content to get it to fit. Okay, so this is how we want to do it. The main changes we want to do are to header, margin left 15 pixels, margin right 15 pixels to all of the header, and then add back in some padding into our H group. The other way we could have done that, we could have surrounded this with the div inside of here and given that padding left and padding right. It's to compensate for the margin left, margin right. We did that to do our 2-column layout, but because we had done the box sizing everywhere, we needed to get that consistency. Let's talk about another way of styling a background graphic. I want to show you an interesting background graphic I came with over here. What I'm going to do, so you see that that's using tiling graphics, grayscale. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this comment, and after all of that, I wanted to put these all in comments. Oh, here's one other thing I realized that I had done that you had not done. I had adjusted our headers, paragraphs. I gave them padding because watch what happens if we don't have it. Hold on. Let me get that comment back up. Save our changes. Actually, it's not too bad, but I noticed this header up here is pretty tight. We'll deal with that in just a moment. Another thing you got to be careful about is whenever you use a dark background color, you need to change the color. So let's add one more piece here using this right here. Article main, article sidebar. Once you add a background image, you should also set the color. I'm using F0, 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 and I'm going to apply it as well to the sidebar. Save our changes, hit refresh. Now we got our colors here. Fortunately, our hyperlinks look okay, but we should probably add a dark background to the footer as well. So I'm just going to take the header, and I'm going to apply it to the header as well as the footer. And let's see if the footer had a class. Yeah, footer main. So footer.footer footer main. Save our changes. Hit refresh. Now our footer main has the same issue. As our header had. So all we have to do now is copy this after header. So now we're applying the margin left and margin right to both header and footer. Save our changes. Hit refresh. Of course, we have a problem with our footer, right? Because there's all this space in here. Because we did the margin left and margin right, and then all our text went right to the edge. So we're going to do something to sort of clean that up. We're going to add a div inside of our footer. I'm going to paste, tab that over. So you see how we have a div inside of here? The reason why I put the div here, actually we don't need the div if we don't want to. We can actually just target this paragraph inside of our footer. But if we want to put lists and other things in the footer, which you may very well decide to do, it's a good idea to have a div around there anyway. And we're adding this because if we change our padding to footer, it's going to mess up with the margins. So all we have to do to sort of clean that up, we'll just go down to here. You see how that footer, footer main, we're going to add one more piece here. I'm going to put on here footer, footer main, and we're going to do div. Now I'm using this greater than sign because this means the very first div we come across in the footer. We may end up having divs within divs, and for that reason it's probably best just to target this main div that surrounds everything. And here, we're going to add padding back in, and we're just going to put 15 pixels all around. Save our changes. Hit refresh. Now our footer looks a little bit better, but our hyperlink now is really difficult. If all of our background colors are going to be dark, it's not a bad idea to make light-colored hyperlinks. However, we could just say anchors inside of our footer. And here's how I would do that. I just put footer dot footer main space A for our hyperlink color, and then I don't know, we'll try some form of white. We'll try a bunch of E9s. Save our changes. Hit refresh. And there's our hyperlink. It's a lighter color. Fits in the footer. Since the header already has that, we're good. Sidebar, if you're going to have a standard link, you better make sure you cover that as well. So really, probably the best idea is to target anything you have a dark background. Make sure you add this. So if you were to add it to the sidebar, you can just put dot sidebar space A, comma, footer main. And we can do that for any other regions that has a dark color. Not only sidebar, but we also had it in article.main. Hyperlink. And then if we have a hyperlink inside of article main, put an article right here, or a hyperlink, like so. Drag it down here, save our changes, go to the site, look up here, hit refresh. There's a hyperlink there too. Of course, we could get another color, yellow, green, whatever. Let's try green. Save our changes. Hit refresh. It's not light enough. Let's try lime. There we go. Lime stands out in gray pretty well. See that? But then we have our links over here, and that looks bad. So just understand, you have to kind of go in and figure out how you're going to do this. We already targeted in navigation our sidebar A. Well, we already had these hashtag nav containers, so maybe we just put here sidebar space sidebar space. Make sure you add a dot in front. So this is for the nav anchors inside the sidebar only. Hit refresh, hit refresh. Those links are back, and this is still green. And if we added a link somewhere outside of the list, then we would have that.